everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our webinar on how to achieve your collaboration goals for 2021. We really want to make this an interactive webinar, so please feel free at any time at all to ask questions. You can either do that in the chat, just take yourself off mute and ask a question, because that's what it's all about. We really think the best way of learning is learning from each other's experiences, and that's what we want to be able to do today. The other thing I really want to ask you to do is if you can have a think about what goals you want to achieve at work during 2021. So if you can start thinking about that now, and we're going to start the webinar with Laurie and Emily sharing some of the science and a few slides, but then it's going to be really open to you guys to share your goals, and let's brainstorm as a group as to how you'll be able to achieve those goals. So if you can think about that, that'd be great. So the first thing I want to do is introduce Emily O'Brien, who is SWOOP's Customer Success Director for APAC, and I'm sure you've all met Emily, but if you ever have any questions, please contact her and jump in at any time to ask questions. And again, you're probably very familiar with Dr. Lawrence Lockley, who's SWOOP's one of our co-founders and also our chief scientist. So now I'm actually going to just hand it over to Emily, but again, please feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask a question at any time. Oh, but hang on, I forgot to do our welcome as well. We want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this online session is hosted. For me, that's Ngunnawal country, and the traditional custodians of the land where our participants are located. We'd also like to pay our respects to elders past, present and future. On behalf of SWOOP Analytics, we'd like to welcome and acknowledge all our participants from Awatere, New Zealand. And I did see some of our New Zealand friends on the call earlier, so welcome from New Zealand as well. And I'll hand over to you now, Emily.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon, and thanks everyone for joining. So the way we usually like to start these webinars, we need to get you all a little bit warmed up so we can have some really valuable discussion a little bit later on in the session. As Sharon said, we want you to start thinking about goal setting right from the very start. So that we can kick off, if you'll see the URL on the screen and a user code. So if you just grab your nearest device, or you can use your web browser if you'd like. If you head to www.menti.com, and it will be prompting you to use a code. The code is 5458015. So I'll just give everyone a few seconds to jump in there and pop that code in. And just for this part of the session, if anyone's not quite on mute yet, just pop yourselves on mute, but later on, we want you to jump off mute. Okay, so I'm hoping you've all been able to make your way over to Menti. And I'm going to share my screen. Now, oh, it's great, we've already got the results rolling in. So the first question that we have here is, do you currently set goals for your collaboration platform? And I've given you a few options. It's good to see we've got a bit of a variety going on at the moment. We've got 20 votes coming in. I know that we've got about 50 in the session right now, so I need some more votes to come in. We need an adequate sample size. We've got Dr. Lawrence Lockley on the call, so we need to keep that up. So it's interesting to see we've got 18% at the moment who are already setting goals for their collaboration platforms, and that is incredible. That's great to see. For any of those people who are saying yes, it might even be good a little bit later on in the call if we could even hear what some of those goals are, but we'll get to that a bit later. We've got 45% who have said no, not currently setting goals, and that's completely okay. This is a great session just to give you a bit of a kickstarter and to get you into the right mindset for goal setting. And I just have to put that last option on the end there, just in case, you know, a lot of people goal setting, it seems to be on the radar, but for some reason it tends to slip down the priorities. So the SWOOP team today, we're hoping to really put goal setting front of mind for you. And to do that, I'm just going to jump back into our slides. So for those who did answer no, as I said, that is okay. And this sort of framework that we have here is just a place for you to start. You'll notice that it's very top level, it's very broad, but this should get you into the rhythm of things for all things goal setting. So first of all, you'll need to decide what the most important business outcomes are for your organization. As I said, very broad, we're starting very top level. Next, we want you to decide what the role the collaboration platform will have in delivering these outcomes. So whether that's Yammer, whether that's Workplace, Microsoft Teams, you need to think about what the purpose of that platform is for your organization and how you can use that to achieve your organization's broader goals. And then, of course, we want you to decide what the collaboration goals should be. Of course, we're super excited to be, we've just recently launched the brand new goal setting feature in the SWOOP dashboard. Maybe some of you have already had a chance to have a look around and have a play around, but hopefully today we'll have you up to speed on all of the functionalities and just get you thinking a little bit more about goal setting. You'll notice in the dashboard that SWOOP does provide you with some default goals, but we would definitely recommend that you have a think about these goals for your own organization's context. For some organizations that we have here, maybe you've only just recently rolled out your collaboration platform. It's probably not realistic to set your goals at 100% across every single SWOOP measure from the get-go. It's probably not realistic. But we definitely hope that some of these default goals will give you a nice starting place just to see where where a lot of the other organizations are performing on average globally as well. Where are we up to now? So I'm going to jump forward now. I'm going to hand over to Laurie just for a few minutes just to talk about some of the research and the benchmarking and how we get to come to these default goals that you see in the dashboard, just referring back to some frameworks, which I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with. So hand over to you now, Laurie.
Okay, thanks, Emily. So those of you that have been around SWOOP and Yammer for a while might recognise this maturity framework that we established six years ago now. It was with Yammer and in general with enterprise social networks in general. So and as you can see, it's actually something that we compiled from two other ones that we did some research with. Simon Terry has a maturity framework which starts from the connect, share, solve, innovate. And then we had an overlapping one from Siemens that included the platform adoption and user engagement and probably stopped short of the solve and innovate. So collectively, we felt this was a good framework to work with. Then we fitted our measures within those because we could see that some of the measures were more relevant to the early stages of adoption and some were more relevant to the more mature ones. Now, when you see maturity frameworks like this, the typical way they're used is that consultants will come in and they'll run a survey and maybe, a dozen people in your organization might answer it. And, they'll position you somewhere within this framework. Well, what's unique about SWOOP is that we don't survey people. We actually measure what you're doing every day of the week. So we've got a very comprehensive benchmarking sort of database on how people and communities. In fact, our most recent sort of benchmarking report for Yammer shows that we benchmarked nearly 9,000 communities. So we've got a very rich set of data describing how communities are moving through this maturity framework. And it is sort of interesting. You could look at those measures at the top, say the innovate, and say, well, why don't we just go up there and work on our curiosity index, our multi-group diversity index, and get there faster. Well, it turns out that you might be able to do that when you first start up. You could get a group of 5 or 6 and you could really hit that measure, but your adoption will be pretty low, right? So it turns out there's some inbuilt checks and balances in this framework as you go forward. So so as I said, they're not just on the dashboard. They might look like they're all over the place, but there's a lot of thought gone into how you actually use these measures. And what we're excited about is the goals, the default goals that we've set. We've actually set at the top 20% level. So the measures that you see with flags on them on the platform, this is the level that is where if you're in the top 20% of any community at that level, that's the level if you achieve that level, then you're up there with the top 20% in our, if you like, at the moment, 9,000 plus communities. And if you go to the next one, Emily, so for the teams out there, those people using digital teams, we're adopting this more popular, I guess, framework, the forming, storming, norming, and performing framework, and we've framed our measures within the scope of that maturity. model. And of course, as I said, most consultants, you'll get surveys and stuff about your team and so forth. Again, SWOOP measures actually what you're doing, the interactions that you're actually performing, and you can start to sort of characterize where your team is according to these measures. And I must say that in the research that we've done with teams, teams can move through this maturity. Individual teams can move through this maturity fairly quickly. If you've got a very strong physical team that creates a digital team to mimic it, we've seen people move from formation to maybe not quite up to the Teams of Teams hub, but certainly to the self-direction within days, right? So, but for others, it could take months, so it really does tell you how well you're actually moving into this whole digital team space and how effective your teams are becoming. And you can monitor those through the goals that we set, for each of these measures at each phase. We're about to, and we'll tell you a little bit about this later, but we're about to sort of run our second Microsoft Teams benchmarking exercise. In fact, I'm working on it right now, so we'll talk a little bit about how some of you might be able to participate in that. But in the same frame, we'll be able to tell who the top, 20% performing teams are. We go and validate that by actually talking to those teams, or as many as we can. And of course, our benchmarking reports include, some wonderful case studies. And of course, that's Sharon's area. So look forward to that. And of course, we can tell you what we believe your top performing teams are. And if they're like the communities, some of them will be a real surprise. You'll find some real nuggets in there. And I think finally, again, in the team space, Emily, if you just move to the next space, we're hearing a lot about, especially going through this COVID period, this transformation of organisations, going from the traditional hierarchical efficiency-focused structures into the more agile structures where I actually see most of the middle area, which we're calling agility. You'll find that a lot of organisations still have a lot of business as usual hierarchy, but you'll see in some parts of your organisation, often in the project areas where people are creating new sort of products or services, that they are working more like agile teams and so forth. So we're seeing a bit of a mix here. And of course, we're all aiming for the big transition where we're all in this sort of agile space. There's no, overriding hierarchy. We're all working together, interacting and self-directing and so forth. Well, of course, the SWOOP measures actually can indicate that. We can actually see that picture for your whole organisation. So this is a future for mostly. I would say that most organisations are in the first two areas, but obviously we're hopeful that we'll see some organisations, or at least big parts of organisations, starting to work in that truly agile way. And you can see some of the graphics I put on this slide. The Team of Teams graphic is particularly strong. The team persona is very, very informative. And, what proportion of your teams are actually self-directed, which we actually assess through the ways that you interact, is important. And we are seeing some much more movement towards that. So I'm quite looking forward to what that proportion looks like in this year's report. So I'll leave it there, and of course, we'll have the conversation later, and we can talk about, the default targets that we've set. But as I said, the targets have been set from a base of, thousands and thousands of teams and communities. So we're pretty confident about that. Okay, back to you, Emily, for the demo.
Excellent. Thanks, Laurie. So we also wanted to take the opportunity today just to walk you through all of the key functionality that you'll find in the dashboard with the rollout of the goal setting feature. So as we're talking through this, you might want to open your SWOOP dashboard if you have access. Otherwise, we'll make sure we send across some additional support materials so that you're across how to do all of these things in the dashboard as well. So I'm just going to jump into our live SWOOP demo. So just a quick housekeeping or sort of admin thing before you get started with goal setting. You'll need to ensure that you have the date range in the dashboard set to 3 months. And the reason why you have to set the date range to 3 months is because the default goals that SWOOP provides are a little bit more sensitive to shorter time periods. So first and foremost, make sure your dashboard is set to the 3-month time period. Okay, so we're going to run through a few quick examples of what this looks like on the different SWOOP products. and across some of the different measures. And I might even give you some ways to weave this into some certain goal setting scenarios that you'll come across. So I'm starting the enterprise dashboard for the moment. And what you'll notice is that a lot of the quantitative reports that you see, you'll now have this little flag icon, which represents where the goal setting feature is available. What we'll do is for this first one, the enterprise dashboard, we'll focus on interactive users report just here. So a few key call outs is that you can still see where your organization is currently performing. So for this particular organization, this is quite a small sample size. It's an organization of 14 members. So currently this organization is performing at the 79%, and that is still represented by the green line that you have here. And maybe we need to just make sure that we have this set at the default. This might change things. Okay, so we're currently set at the default goal set by SWOOP. If you hover over the flag, you'll be able to see where the minimum goal is set. So for this particular measure, SWOOP's default is to achieve 60% interactive users. Now, you'll also see that there's this green shaded area here. And this is kind of the way that you could think about this is sort of like the goalposts for where you would like to be performing. And as Laurie mentioned just earlier, this green section is representing where the top 20% performers for this measure are performing. So for this example, sitting at 79% interactive users, that's a really strong result. Of course, they're performing beyond where the goal is. They're in that goal range. But then you also have the ability to adjust some of these goals as well. So when I mentioned before, it's important to look at this from the lens of your organization and your own context. Maybe hitting 60% interactive users is a goal that you want to achieve in 12 months' time as opposed to 3 months' time. So for this organization, they're already achieving the goal. Maybe we want to move those goalposts up a little bit and actually set a higher goal for ourselves. So the way that you would do that, you click into the 3 dots here in the top right-hand corner of the report. You'll notice you still have the download button there, but then there's also this option here to adjust goals. So if we click on this option here, you'll then have a separate pop-out, and this is where you can make all of the adjustments you would like to make. So you can see at the moment it's set to the default, which is 60%. Maybe we want to shift things up a little bit and say we want to hit 90% interactive users. You can then click Save Goal, and what you'll notice when that reloads, your goalposts have slightly shifted. So now you have more of a target that you would like to get to. A few additional things that I just wanted to call out here. You can also set a maximum goal. So if you're wanting to set your own customized range, you have the ability to do that here. You just click in and then you can shift each of these sliders across as well. You can turn off the goal setting altogether if you would like, which I don't recommend you do. I definitely recommend you have a look and actually set some of these goals for yourselves. Say you get to a point where you want to refer back to SWOOP's default goals, which we've been able to generate using our benchmarking studies. You can also click Reset to Default, and that will take you back to where it was originally sitting. And the last thing I'll just call out there, which you may have noticed down the bottom, of course, we're going to make sure we send out a lot of these goal setting resources to you, but you can also access them directly from your SWOOP dashboard as well. And you'll be able to access by clicking on Learn About Goals. That will take you directly to the SWOOP support site. That's where you can then select your platform of choice. So say, for example, we're running with Microsoft Teams. You'll click in there and you'll find all of the team-specific goal setting materials that you'll need just to get started. So we've got a lot of that background there as well. We walk through all of the measures that have the default goals and that you can set the goals for. We show you what the default goals are and lots of extra information, things about permissions, which I'll also talk to in just a moment as well. But I'm just going to jump back into this demo site again. And I'm going to walk through another example. Apologies if this gets a little bit repetitive, but I want to make sure that you're across all of the key functionality. So you can also set the goals, for example, in the communities dashboard if you're running with SWOOP for Yammer. If this was SWOOP for Workplace, you'd be jumping into the groups dashboard. And what we can see here, if we scroll down, now for communities, we're going to have a look at the mention index. And we can see that we have the flag here again, hovering over it. We can see that the default goal is to achieve at least 10% on your mention index. And for this particular organization, they're actually doing, for this particular community, they're actually doing a really great job at using that, at using at mentioning and tagging. And I know we refer to these stats all the time, but we know through our research that at mentioning can lead to, on average, 73% more responses. So this community has well and truly got that message, which is great to see. And because they're performing so well, this is also another circumstance where you may want to adjust the goals to suit your context a little bit better. So maybe this community would like to set the goal of 70% mention index, which is probably quite ambitious, quite a big jump, but that's where you can then click Save Goal, and you'll have that adjusted now for your community. So you have it more of a target that you're working towards. You want to make it inside of those goalposts where the top 20% are performing. So that's a very quick community-based example. I'm also going to jump into the personal dashboard. Now, I'm actually going to give you a little bit of a tricky example here. And I know that we have a lot of community managers on the call that have leadership engagement top of mind. And the way I'm going to, give you an idea of how you could potentially use this goal setting is for when you sit down for coaching sessions with some of your executive leaders. We know a lot of you are already pulling together leaderboards and benchmarking tables. So let's just quickly do that. If you need additional instructions on how to build these benchmarking tables, lots of support materials of this available in the support site. So we have the senior leaders comparison list selected, which I had prepared earlier. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to scroll down. And now I can see, of course, how all of my senior leadership team are performing. I'm just going to scroll down here. We can see the results coming up. Everyone's looking okay, but I know that this week I'm going to sit down and have a coaching session with Ruth, who is my CEO. So I'm going to click into Ruth's profile here. That's a little SWOOP hack if anyone hasn't seen that before. Those names in the leaderboards are hyperlinked. So now we've been taken directly to Ruth's personal dashboard, and we can sit down and set some goals for Ruth's usage of whatever collaboration platform this organization may be using. What I'm going to focus on for Ruth specifically, though, is the curiosity index. And we can see that, unfortunately, Ruth is doing a pretty terrible job of asking questions on her ESN at the moment. The reason why we measure curiosity is because we've found through our research that asking a question can lead to, on average, 150% more responses. So if you can have those data-driven conversations with your leadership team, I'm sure their ears will prick up and they'll want to start asking questions. And of course, it's really important to ask questions to, facilitate a culture that has that high level of psychological safety. People feel open to share feedback, build those continuous feedback loops and all those sorts of things. So encouraging your leaders to ask questions, I'd say, would be a really good thing to do. And because Ruth is currently sitting at 0% and we have the goal set at 17%, maybe that's a little bit ambitious for where Ruth is currently sitting. So you could potentially adjust some of these goals specifically for Ruth. And we can maybe shift that one down to say, let's try and get Ruth to hit 8% curiosity. That might be a really nice starting point. We'll click Save Goal, and then you can go through and maybe target a few of these key measures just to get Ruth started on, collaborating and engaging a little bit more on the your preferred collaboration platform. So that's a personal, so that's kind of focusing on the Yammer and workplace customers. I know we also have a few people running with SWOOP for Teams as well on the session today. So don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to jump over into our SWOOP for Teams demo system. And I'm going to just give a quick example of what this looks like on the Teams dashboard. So this is where you'll log in. You'll search for a specific team. Maybe you're the leader of a team and you're wanting to go in and see how people are performing. Of course, we can see this is actually quite a high-performing team. Just from the persona, I can see very quickly here, this is a self-directed team. And it probably also helps that they've kept the members in this team at a really good level, sitting at 11. Usually we recommend no more than 10. But this team, it seems to be doing a really good job just at first glance. What I'm going to look at for this one, the two-way relationships measure. So currently this team is sitting at 85%, which is a really impressive result. If we hover over the flag, we can see that the goal for two-way relationships at the team level is at least 80%. But because this is only quite a small team, there's only 11 users, you can probably, even bump this up a little bit further and expect maybe closer to 100% two-way relationships potentially. So what I'll do here is we're going to do the adjustment of the goal again. So currently we have this sitting at the default. I'm going to go in adjust goal, and let's be super ambitious and we'll say we want 100% two-way relationships. We'll click save goal, and then that will then be adjusted for the rest of the team as well. So that's kind of our first, I know I've ran through those relatively quickly, but I'm hoping you'll be able to spend some time in the dashboard, just, familiarizing yourself with the feature, seeing how it all works. I'm not sure if anyone has any initial questions off the back of what I've shown you today. I'm not sure if we have anything coming through in the chat just yet either, which I don't have open at the moment.
Nothing coming through yet.
Okay, so I'm hoping that means that everything is crystal clear.
And I have, Emily, shared, when you put the support site up, I've shared the link in the chat as well if anyone's looking for that. I know ANZ were already thinking about sharing it on their Yammer network today.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Sharon. So I'm just going to jump back into our slides now. And I also just wanted to, talk to some of the specifics, the things that you'll want to know anyway around permissions. So what I've done is I've broken this down by your normal SWOOP user and also your SWOOP full admin. So what we have here for normal SWOOP users, you will have the ability to change goals on your own personal dashboard. You'll be able to go in and make these adjustments on the community, group, segment, topic, or threads dashboard. You'll just notice for some of those dashboards, we don't have the default goals there, but you can certainly adjust your own goals and add those in yourself. Then we have that you can also change the goals on the Teams dashboard. But then just as a flag for normal users, if you adjust the goals for communities, groups, segments, or topics, then your name will be recorded against this along with the date that it was adjusted, just so there's that level of accountability there if anyone is going in and shifting anything around. I know on today's session we have some really passionate group and community admins who are wanting to set some goals for their communities and groups. So if anyone did happen to go in and change any of those goals, you can definitely see who's changed them, and I'm sure you can probably have a bit of a positive conversation around goal setting as a result of that as well. But in saying that, these are the permissions that we've set just to start off. And if you do have any feedback on the feature, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. It'd be really great to hear what you think of the feature just as some of the first users. Then we also have the full SWOOP admin. So I think a lot of the people on the call here today would also be looking at this from the lens of, change and adoption, internal comms, community management, those sorts of things. So you can also do all of the same things that somebody that a normal user of SWOOP would be able to do. The little extra superpower that you get is that you're able to change the goals on the enterprise dashboard. So you're able to adjust those goals at that organization top level, things like interactive users, two-way relationships. You mentioned index, curiosity index, and that's for everyone in the organization. So that's like a little bit extra that you do have on top of the normal SWOOP user. Any questions on that, please do just continue to use the chat section as well. And I'd be happy to answer those as they come through. We can cover some of them off at the end as well. But I think we're actually going into a bit more of a discussion section just now. If I jump forward, we're actually going to go and jump back into Menti again. So if you could jump in on your device and you'll be going to the same code, and I'll have that question the second question loaded up for you in just a moment. Okay, so you can also see the Menti link there in the code if you need it again as well. And this is just kind of you can fill in whatever you'd like to say, but as Sharon said at the start, we want to get you to start thinking about goal setting and what the goals might be for your organization. And it's probably a really fitting time of year as well to think about this. I know we're already into February, but if you haven't already started setting goals, then this is definitely the time to start. This is your kickstart. So it doesn't matter how broad your goals are, how specific they are, just pop them into the Menti platform. And what I think we could do is actually maybe pick out some of these goals a little bit later on and talk a little bit more about what some of the SWOOP recommendations would be on how to achieve them as well. So we've got some collaboration goals coming in already. This is really great to see. Increase engagement by 20%. All the best with that. I'm sure you'll reach it. To get my CEO posting regularly. Yes, it's great to even just have some of these more specific goals around leadership. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific measure in the dashboard. More engagement by senior leadership. Identify our key influences in the organisation, not just the leaders. That's good too. Wow, great answers here. They're all coming through very quickly. 17 answers. Maybe it says I can pause the scroll here if I click on this. Increase executive engagement seems to be a recurring theme here, and I'm sure we'll have some really great examples to talk to after this. Increase two-way relationships while people are working from home. That's an interesting one as well. Sharon and Laurie, do you have any call-outs here from some of these ones that are coming in?
It's quite interesting. I did see the one with getting the CEO to post more. I'd follow that very quickly with getting the CEO to reply more. Because as Emily said, our research has shown that just a simple CEO reply to employee can get them to actually connect with 60% more people just because they got a response from the CEO. So often senior leaders don't realize the impact they can actually have. And certainly, if you're just a normal old worker and the CEO of a 60,000 organization happens to say hi to you, well, that gets you pretty excited. So I'd follow that up posting with replying pretty quickly.
Excellent. And then we've still got even more coming through. We're just making sure that we can filter through some of these. But thanks everyone for jumping in and giving that input. But this is probably a good opportunity here. I know we want to have some really great discussion around some of these goals that you've raised. So if we might jump back into these answers just after, but I'm going to jump back into the slides now. And I'm just going to kick off with a quick discussion topic. I know this is, again, very top level, but we'd love for anyone to jump in and share some of their experiences with goal setting. If you just want to start by popping some of your experiences very quickly in the chat, it'd be great if we could call on some of you to even share a few things. I'm not sure if we have, I know that Medibank have been thinking about their goal setting as well. And we've got Kat Owen. I'm pretty sure we've got Kat on the call today. And Kat, if you are there, would you maybe like to just, oh, excellent. I was going to say, if you want to come off mute, jump on in. I was wondering if you might be able to share a little bit about what Medibank are doing in terms of goal setting at the moment.
Sure. So I guess the goal setting side of things is quite new to us. We have been tracking our engagement metrics for the past month with monthly dashboards, and we've managed to, I guess, maintain consistency over the last 12 months. So for us, this year is really about looking at where we can improve and setting some goals in line with that 20% of the top performing organizations around where we want to get to, particularly with those things like interactive users. We've got a great opportunity, I think, to really link in and identify those people that are just sort of the stalkers on Yammer and start getting them to engage. A colleague of mine and I were just linking before, and there's so much opportunity with our senior leaders. So we're really keen to do some goal setting in that space, and we're blown away, Lawrence, with your 60% more engagement with just replies. So that's such an easy thing that we can get them to do. So we'll be coming together as a team to look at our key engagement metrics, what we want to set as an organisation for enterprise, and then probably specifically for key people within the business. So really excited about this new tool, Emily. Yeah.
Excellent. It sounds like there's been a lot of deep thought around goal setting at Medibank, which is great. And also, Medibank is an organisation that have been identified as, one of the top most collaborative organisations globally. So it doesn't matter if, you are achieving these amazing results. It's important to continue to keep setting these goals, so that you're tracking that consistency over time. But then, jumping up to the next level, it's great that you're still thinking about that. Sorry, Sharon, did you have something to add there?
Yeah. Kat, I was just going to ask you, one of the questions that's come in is someone's asking if they're interested in discussing frontline workers, and I guess it's engaging frontline workers. Obviously, you've had frontline workers in shop fronts at Medibank stores or shop fronts around the country. Is that something that you are focused on doing, is actually connecting your frontline workers with your CEO and your executives and everyone working behind the scenes? And if so, how are you doing that?
Definitely. I might handball to my colleague Bailey, who I know is on the call, if that's okay. Bailey looks after our two key divisions within Medibank that are our front-facing employees, and I know that there's definitely pockets that are really engaged with Yammer, but certainly there is opportunity for us as well. So, Bales, do you want to jump on? Hey, yes. Sorry for that last minute.
That's all right, no worries. Glad I washed my hair today. So we've got two kind of pockets of frontline workers at Medibank. We've got our kind of PHI, retail call centre type employees, and then we have another pocket that are more kind of clinical telehealth employees that look after more kind of patient side audiences. So our retail team are, I think, our top two most engaged Yammer groups across the entire enterprise. So our retail network are really quite engaged on Yammer, and they share a lot of like customer stories, kind of sales wins, that kind of stuff. And there's a really nice kind of sense of I guess competition that happens on Yammer, and that's why that group works really well. Our call center teams, obviously, frontline teams are so hard. It's so hard for them to get time off the phones because a lot of their day is scheduled. So we have a new leader looking after our call center team, and instead of kind of adding another newsletter and another email to land in their inboxes, she's really quite keen to do a lot of her comms on Yammer to try and bring that audience to her. So we'll see how that goes.
So Bailey, is that where maybe the goal setting would come in? So with that call centre team, you would target the leader of that call centre team, set her some goals, and then you'd be looking at that to measure. And then I guess would you then somehow be surveying or using SWOOP to survey those employees in the call centre to see if that's resonating with them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. Thanks, Sharon. I'll write that one down.
And I'm just trying to think of the practicalities
of course, if your directory has the call centre sort of identifies the call centre participants, of course you can look at just that grouping in the business segment. So you can, I guess we can set we set it at the business segment level for Yammer, I assume. I think we do. So I think if you do have that sort of data in your directory, you can start to look at. As I said, functional groups like that, you can look at that functional group and see how they're moving. And frontline is, it's very, and I mean, we were recently talking with Humana, which is your style of business in the US. So obviously, it's a lot bigger, but certainly we're looking at some of their teams now. We're doing some research with them, with Harvard around, how their nursing teams are actually going to collectively collaborate and so forth. So. And they're a different style of frontline because they're quite specialists even. So it's a very exciting time for this monitoring and goal setting and stuff like that. So especially with this transition to home.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the other questions we had, and Bailey or Kat, it'd be great if you can answer this, but if there's anyone else who might have another answer, is then, it's all well and good to set goals at the beginning of the year and everyone's energised after we've had Christmas and holidays and we're back into it. But 6 months down the track, we're in the middle of winter and everyone's a little fatigued. How do you keep the momentum going, and how do you keep achieving those goals in that second half of the year? Can anyone share?
So at Medibank, we, as an employee comms team, we haven't set goals yet specifically for Yammer, but we have been spending the last 12 months with goals for our intranet engagement. So each month I set specific goals for the team that it might be number of views for articles, number of articles that we share over the course of the month, goals around sharing them across Yammer, so interaction between our two platforms. So I think visibility is really key. So each month, the start of the month, the team get their goals, and then probably every fortnight I do a check-in. This is how we're tracking, this is where we might need to focus. So I think just that consistency of always having them front and center, because it is really easy, you get caught up in day to day. So I think having one person that's almost in charge of setting those goals and helping keeping the team on track is really helpful. And then you can celebrate at the end of each month. We celebrate the wins. If we have hit all our targets and our goals for that month, we celebrate as a team. It's captured in our monthly dashboards that get fed up to senior leaders in the people and culture team. So I think celebration is really key as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Kat. It's been so great to have the goals as an internal comms team, because it really just makes you kind of put your journalistic hat on as well and be really proactive in sourcing content and stories, whereas before you might be a bit more reactive with, posting about projects or kind of the BAU. But having those goals really front and centre really, it's kind of inspiring and encouraging to find new content and engage a different segment of audience or maintain an audience that's already engaged.
I love how you talk about celebrating those once you've achieved those goals. Can you explain to us what that actually looks like?
It's very simple. It might just be like a funny meme. Like it's mainly been on email because we've been all virtual as a team, but our broader, leaders will get CC'd in, and it's basically just it's verbal sort of celebration in a group email chain that is the exciting bit. And everyone chimes in, everyone, gets to congratulate a particular person if, they, significantly contributed to a piece of work or, hopefully with potentially being back to face-to-face in some capacity, there will be opportunity to have more physical celebrations. But it's been very virtual for the past 12 months.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I don't know whether anyone from Customer Service New South Wales is on the call. When we had our last SWOOP chat face-to-face get-together, which seems so long ago now, we had Nick White from Customer Service New South Wales talk about a campaign that they ran, and it was as simple as just hashtagging thanks. And I think it started with leadership just doing thanks for, it was towards the end of the year, thanks for a great year, hashtag thanks, and then tagging in a few people, and it just started the momentum rolling of more and more people getting recognised. Thanks to Joe who brings me a coffee every morning and puts it on my desk. It makes my day. Really simple things like that they were posting on Yammer or Workplace, and it was just creating, this strong engagement. Maybe that's an idea in answer to that question about how do you continue with that engagement in the second half of the year when goals can sometimes drop off. Maybe that's a good example that we can all learn from. Do a simple campaign like a recognition campaign or a celebratory campaign like Kat and Bailey have shared.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else got some stories to share or some goals that you'd like to achieve, and we can brainstorm as to how to go about achieving those?
Is there any other stories around leaders? I mean, we've got lots of interesting case studies around how leaders have been influential. Has anybody got any interesting ideas as to the way they've tried to sort of encourage their leaders to become more engaged, on whether it's on Yammer or even Teams for that matter? Oh yeah, that's good.
I like some of the comments, Emily. There was one about how do we connect our people across APAC, so from India, Australia, New Zealand as well, and there are a few other of that similar. Oh yeah, there it is. Similar sorts of ones, with people working from home. How do we help staff feel connected? Yeah, with people in other teams and divisions. Has anyone got some tips there, or otherwise, Emily, can you maybe point towards how the goal setting can help with some of those two-way relationships or of those connections.
I'm not sure if we have anyone else who wants to jump in. Maybe everyone's a little bit shy. I thought I had you all warmed up.
Plenty of input in the questions.
I'm warm.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Do you have anything to add, Mark?
Just, I think the thing with leaders that I've spoken to and seen is the thing they've had to pivot on is actually checking in more with how people are going. So normally that was not part of the so much the leadership that you'd launch into a presentation, a meeting, the purpose of the meeting, or what have you. And I think the big change with people happening things, virtual teams, is, as we know, that initial conversation, even that we had right at the beginning of this call, becomes super important to get people connected and as you say, Emily, warmed up. So I think to a degree, being leaders in a virtual setting is a harder ask. Always the catchphrase I use, and we talk about at SWOOP, I know, is leaders need to be interested, not necessarily interesting. So that's obviously the catchphrase. So that's where Yammer and teams, it's sort of checking in on people and seeing and passing things on, that suggestions, innovations from others. But I think the thing virtually is you need to allow time for interaction that's less formal, and you need to check in on people's welfare. Is super important, and good leaders I've heard say that's how they've had to adjust.
Well, thanks for that, Mark. I think you're right. I had overlooked, in the Yammer benchmarking, we definitely see, we saw a growth in that health and well-being commentary, through the word clouds and things like that. So it'd be interesting to see whether that sort of concern about staff health and well-being is actually being reflected in the goals that are being set. We hadn't thought specifically about that because it was happening anyway, but and thankfully so, in fact. But I'm just wondering if anybody is setting health and well. I'm sure we've got health and well-being goals, but how does it reflect through the platform? So I know we monitor sentiment and things like that, but the keywords often really did give us a bit of a picture. And what we did find in the benchmarking is that, it wasn't so much COVID, but people were really quite grateful. As I said, thanks was our biggest word that we found. But health and well-being type words were coming up quite regularly.
Sharon, I'm not sure. In our most recent benchmarking report, I think we did have a few case study examples where health and wellness obviously became the big focus throughout the work from. Or back to you, Sharon, otherwise.
I was just going to say, Kat and Bailey had that great example. Do you remember of the dance-off that you told me about, Kat and Bailey?
Yeah.
Can you share that, please?
Sure. So we actually haven't. I like the idea of setting some health and wellbeing goals with SWOOP. But last year we ran a new program called Feel Good Grants. So employees were encouraged to share suggest a health and wellbeing goal or activity, and then the winning ideas received a grant to bring that goal to life. But one of the ways that we engaged employees to get them involved in this campaign was to host dance-offs. So we did virtual dance-offs between two business units. They were all pre-recorded. We used Shoots to pull together those videos. We shared them on a Friday as a bit of a feel-good Friday vibe, and we engaged our executive leaders in that. So the head of each business unit were involved in sharing the post, congratulating the other business unit on winning. So we used the poll function with Yammer. We used, there was a lot of two-way engagement, so people could like, share. It created competition between business units, and then the call to action was that this was our big feel-good idea. What's yours? So then we drove people to the platform where they could submit their own health and wellbeing ideas. So we're in the process of rolling out the top 6 ideas that received grants over this next 12 months. So it was a really fun engaging way. We find Yammer is really great for those campaign side of things, and we did use it heavily for, I guess, the promotion of health and wellbeing activities last year around self-care, taking time out, etc. So,
And
yeah,
Kat,
it was really well received.
Will that lead on then this year? You said there were the 6 top ideas got the grant, so we continue to use that on the Yammer platform and roll that along?
Absolutely. It'll definitely be one of the channels that we use for promotion around any activities and initiatives that stem out of those winning ideas, for sure. Yeah.
I see a question here that's come in from Amanda, sort of about, you're saying that staff are becoming anxious about returning to the office and whether we can use Yammer to monitor that anxiety of returning to the office. So off the top of my head, I can't quite think of that, but you could definitely have a hashtag saying back to the office and see what the sentiment looks like around it and who's been involved in that conversation. I could imagine that. But.
Laurie, can I put Richie O'Ryan from ANZ on the spot here, because this was something that you guys had to address when you was it Alexis Knight, I think, did a poll on this question, wasn't it, Richie O'Ryan?
Sorry, yes, I'm here, Richie.
Sorry. Hey, Richie.
I'm just pointing at I'm just pointing at Richie from across the desk to say it's you, you're it.
Yes.
We're both in the office actually, so it's interesting timing for the first time today. So I'll let Richie take this one.
That's right. Yeah. So this is going back quite a few months now, but our Deputy CEO, Alexis George, did a poll just asking when we were able to return to the office, how many days people would be interested in returning. And it was a poll, but we actually saw a significant number of the comments come through talk about public transport and the way that people would return to work and the anxiety around that, and that we kind of trusted people in the building to do the right thing, but it's getting to and from work that was a concern. So it really was reading the comments that was the most helpful. And I guess you could look at sentiment, you could look at the keywords on Yammer as well, but really that was an amazing kind of data point for us to take away and actually address when we were looking at encouraging people to return. And I know there's been a more recent conversation and interesting, it's in the mental health and wellbeing community about the anxiety about returning to work, and there's a lot of people kind of sharing tips and tricks and information on how they're feeling and what they're kind of worried about or if they're comfortable. So it's really about kind of reading through the comments and starting the conversation as well. It can be anybody that starts the conversation if it resonates. Yeah, it's helpful.
The other thing we picked up on through the conversation on Yammer, it seems really trivial, but through our regular reporting, there was a lot of conversation about lockers and people being worried about whether or not they'd still have a locker when they came back and what was going to happen to all the stuff that they left behind in their lockers. And you could easily just dismiss that and think, oh, well, that's really not important in the grand scheme of things. But throughout monitoring and reporting, it just kept coming up. So we were able to make the recommendation to our property team and say, hey, you actually need to answer this question, provides a really clear guidance for people, because there's all this evidence that it's actually creating a lot of anxiety. And then so they were actually able to go out and then address that topic up front, which is really cool that we can provide that sort of actionable insight off the back of our monitoring and obviously the SWOOP data as well. I've just gotten, I don't know if you can see this, I've just gotten this from my boss, a poster that says I'm shouting. So look, real life first-hand experience, return to the office and adjusting everyone, all sorts of different types of challenges.
I love that.
Wonderful.
Emily, have we got time? I know we're conscious of the time, but there was a question there from Jonathan. Any suggested strategies for evolving a community audience? Oh, sorry, it's just moved up. From passive consumers of posted info towards active participants and posters of new content or conversations. Have you got any strategies, Laurie or Emily, for that?
Well, I posted a little response to that and basically saying, well, there's nothing that can generate conversation better than an organisational leader posting an open question, especially something like, what processes are getting in the way of you doing your job today? That's a very popular one, and we've seen some very stunning responses to those sorts of questions from leaders. So, because everybody hates bureaucracy, so that sort of thing, generates a lot of, and certainly if they follow that up with replies and engage in a discussion, that's the most powerful way we see a network really energizing that sort of people from becoming passive to becoming more active. So it gives them the opportunity to, if you like, complain. If you like, it's even being invited to complain. So that seems to work very well.
That just made me think as well, Laurie. There's a great link that Sharon posted earlier with some great examples of questions that leaders can ask.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say to that as well, to Jonathan's question, it doesn't always have to be the most senior leader in that part of the business. It could just be someone who's well known or influential or is known for speaking up and that type of thing. But sometimes a really great question is a really good way to get people to join in on in a community and start a conversation up.
Exactly. Yeah, look at your influential leaders list. Sort of the people that people are listening to, the catalysts. Have a look at some of those. So.
Well, I know we're pretty much right on time now, and that was awesome discussion. So thank you so much to Medibank and ANZ and for some of those questions that filtered through as well. Mark, of course, thanks for your input. Just a few quick things that I need to run through before we wrap up. Back to the goal setting and the new feature that you have available in SWOOP now, we do have some additional resources which I will make sure you have all of the links for. I think Sharon will pop them in the chat here, but we'll also send out a bit of a post-event wrap-up with all of the information you need to get started with goal setting in SWOOP. We've got a training video available on our SWOOP YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the SWOOP YouTube channel, get on that today. Then we also have a blog post which has all of the information you need to know about goal setting, and then of course the additional support resources in the support site. And also I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to do a call out. We have our 2021 Microsoft Teams benchmarking study coming up very soon. If your organisation would like to be a part of the benchmarking study, we have a deadline of the 15th of February to be signed up, or if you can at least reach out to myself to let me know that you're interested. There's a QR code there for you to register. I'm hoping that works. If not, you can just head to the SWOOP website and there'll be the option to sign up to Microsoft Teams benchmarking. I'm sure there'll be a banner pop up, or you can just head to the benchmarking section. I know we had a few additional questions filtering in. If you want to continue to pop those into the chat here, it'd be great to even set up a separate conversation if you want to have a chat with myself about SWOOP. Otherwise, I'm sure, this was quite a well-subscribed event. Thank you so much for joining. We could even potentially run a bit of a follow-up, or maybe we can even check in on your goals halfway through the year and see how things are tracking. That might be interesting. Anything else to add from Sharon or Laurie?
No, I think, those of you that are on Microsoft Teams, we've got about a week and a half before we close off people sort of being part of that. What I can say is if you join the benchmarking study, and you have, we'll be able to tell you which of your teams are in the top, whatever 5% or whatever we choose, depending how many teams we have, but we expect to have thousands of teams. So we're just collecting that data now, but we've got about a window of about a week or a week and a half before we have to close that off. And so if you've got a fledgling Teams sort of implementation, by all means jump onto our site and sign up for a trial, and in that way we'll be able to get access to some of your data to include it in the benchmarking.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. And Emily, that's a great idea. If there's interest for us, interest for it, please let us know. Maybe we look in, end of June or early July, mid-year goal setting, and let's revamp it and get a little bit more momentum going to see out the back half of the year. Yeah, Richie's in. Great.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Happy
Thanks,
for you to
everyone.
jump off now, and thanks for joining. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
goal setting. Bye.
Happy goal setting.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.